Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of the Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Hey, good morning, Charlie.
Good evening, Shu.
How are you?
Good. How are things in New York?
Pretty good. Very, very cold. Like minus 9 degrees, whatever that is. And anyway, good morning to everybody in Asia, and I guess good evening to everyone in America. Now, hey, let's dive into the first subject, which I want to talk about Shooto show first. Were you there?
No. Corona cases are kind of on the rise in Tokyo again. And so we thought for instance, you can watch it for free on Abima. We thought we'd just stay at home and watch on Abima.
All right. And I didn't see the fight yet, but I wanted to ask you, I guess there's a big difference in Shooto from this show that we see 0-1 FC logo anymore,
Yes.
One championship logo. How did it look?
I, for one, found it very refreshing because I always thought it was kind of weird that Shooto had become like a subservient position to one. It was always like one road to one, or there was like a one championship logo in the cage. It was as big as the Shooto logo. But now it's just a giant Shooto logo. The round girls are back wearing Shooto stuff. So I, for one, am kind of happy about the change.
What about, I saw on Twitter that since the one logo is gone and also the gate on the entrance, so all these little fancy effects were gone. Is it true?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't take that stuff added so little to me personally because I mean it's like Kodaku and Hall, so the entrance isn't that big anyway.
True.
It's like a 20-foot walk from the door to the cage. So
yeah, right. That's true.
It's not like they're at Saitama Super Arena. And I always thought that the charm of this is Abima has like a really high production value for the events they hold, and that's where the viewing pleasure comes from, not from the little knickknacks that one championship put up.
Well, okay, so I mean, it looks like it went back to the old Shooto then.
Yes.
Basically, yeah. Okay.
I think Cal Uno, Kubo, and we're doing color commentary. So yeah, a lot of Shooto stuff going on.
And Ogiko made an appearance, and who else was there? Oh, Hisai Watanabe made a comeback.
Yes. Yeah. So I think last year she kind of made her return. I think the story is that she recently got divorced.
Oh, really?
And she has a young child, so I think she's looking to make some money. And last year,
a rather famous cartoonist or something, right?
Wasn't he an anime or manga? Yeah.
Yeah, manga artist. Right. So he's, I guess, wealthy, I would have to say.
Right, but I know that I don't think like child support and stuff is the same as it is in the States.
Oh yeah, of course, I know.
In Japan,
it's terrible for female. I feel so bad for women in Japan.
Yeah, I mean,
famous actor could be paying like $100 per month per child, kind of stuff. And even though you default on that payment, it takes like a month and years of battle in the court to get that, money.
Yeah, I remember I used to live on this small island called Sadogashima, which is out by Niigata Prefecture.
Okay, yeah. All right.
And there was a ton of single moms on the island.
Oh, really?
And all of the guys would just like leave. They would just go to Honshu, never to be seen or heard from again.
So they go to work like a seasonal worker, and they don't come back, right? They probably
no money comes back, nothing comes back. So yeah,
and they probably don't pay for child support, none of that. That's terrible. I'm telling you. Anyway, so to go back, so Hisai supposedly right, and
she returned in kickboxing last year, but she wasn't successful. She lost her kickboxing return, but she's now returned to MMA. And I always thought she was a better MMA fighter than she was a kickboxer.
Okay.
And successful return. That being said, though, I mean, her opponent opened up what looked like a nasty cut inside her mouth, and Hisai was bleeding out of the sides of her mouth. And like, what year is it? I mean, what happening? Hisai pulled guard and won by armbar. It was like an absolute unexpected, kind of insane finish.
Right. So she finished. Like, everybody thought that she's a striker, so she's gonna try to finish the fight with a striking, but instead she went for the armbar and finished it.
Yes.
And yeah, and I saw the photos of it, and she looks like she had like a what is it, purple hair, and like weird hair
Yeah,
colors.
she
And
like had her hair dyed black with purple streaks in it. She was wearing her trademark leopard skin outfit.
okay. Now,
But
how did she look as a fighter? Did she look like she was like same as before, or
I mean, she looks physically strong. I know she's been working at a kickboxing gym even when she wasn't training. So she's been active in personal training. And but when she went up against the younger opponent, her opponent looked faster.
okay?
Her opponent was able to hit her, and I think that's why she pulled guard.
Ah, okay.
And so I'm kind of curious to see what happens when she goes up against higher level competition because she's never been that good on the ground despite winning by armbar yesterday. So I'm kind of interested to see how this goes forward. Now, the good thing is, for her at least, is that Shuto's atomweight division isn't like super stacked. A lot of
Mm,
the girls in there have like 50-50 records or they
true.
have kind of
Mina Kurobe is the
negative
champ,
records.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Hmm?
Mina Kurobe is the champ, right?
Actually, she lost the title recently to
Yeah.
Satomi Takano.
Nakano, right? Yeah. Okay. So she's the champion. Yeah.
Hmm. And but Kurobe fought yesterday. She won kind of a dominant victory
Hmm.
because I think Shuto's calling like their Infinity League,
Yeah.
where they're
It's
putting on all these women's 48/49 kilo fights, and it's kind of interesting. A lot of them are quite young, and then you have a couple of veterans involved in there
mhm.
as well. And they had this girl yesterday named Miku Nakamura, who for some reason Shuto uses all the time. She fought like 4 times last year.
Maybe
So
she sells tickets.
yeah, she's from
Yeah.
Osaka. Maybe she sells tickets. And I liked when I watched her fight yesterday. What I liked was she threw a lot of standing elbows,
Oh,
and you don't really see that a lot in the Japanese promotions, even when elbows are allowed, because the people are so used to not training them. But it was nice to see that. So, but I expect in this division, Chihiro Sawada is also involved from AACC.
yeah.
She's a really high level wrestler, and so I'm kind of interested to see how she does
Is
in
it
this Infinity
Megumi
League.
Sugimoto also that weight class too?
She is. She fought yesterday, and she won against a girl making her pro debut, but it was a hard fought win.
Right. So that means that Shooto is slowly stacking up a 105 women's division.
They are.
Looks like, yeah, slowly.
Yeah,
But
so they kind of have the nice balance because I mean, is Hisai Watanabe going to who's I think she's only going by Hisai now?
yeah, I saw that. Right? And
Yeah,
different
kind of like
kanji too. Different kanji character. Right.
right. Maybe she's like symbolically about her new fight, like her new career. But you have fighters like her, you have Mina Kurobe, and you have on a like a little lesser degree Megumi Sugimoto, who have
Mhm.
kind of some name value. So that brings attention to it. And then you have all these younger fighters like Sawada and Nakamura who you're building up as well. So I think it's a good combination of veterans and young prospects.
So that's good. That although the one is not, I mean, the shooter is no longer supported by one, but it looks like it went back to the old shooter, and now they're developing women's league, right? I mean, it
Yes.
looks like a good women's atomweight divisions. And on top of that, I also wanted to ask you, like I always talked about these two guys, which is Patrick Usami and Nia Nakamura, which is the two fighters, a so-called, a quote-unquote, graduates from the Abema TV's fight reality show called Dreamers.
Yes. Hmm.
Now, how were they? Because by looking at the articles and the reactions from everybody, both looked pretty solid, no?
Yes. They look, I mean, I was just laughing the entire time. This is completely unrelated, but whenever I see Patrick Usami's name up there, I was just laughing because it just reminded me of Wild Usami because I
Well,
believe their names have the same kanji.
yeah, but
And
it's
so
not,
I
right?
just kept laughing the entire time because I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, another Usami. But no, they both looked good. I was impressed because the Shuto card started out kind of weird in that you had
Mhm,
like fighters that were 0-1 that were like 42 years old fighting.
mhm,
But as it went on, they started highlighting the prospects more.
mhm,
And people like Patrick Usami and Minu Nakamura were some of the more interesting ones later on in the card.
mhm.
And I think all the promotions during Corona kind of have a problem filling out a whole card with solid fights. But I think Shuto did a good job near the end of having these interesting prospects,
Mm.
which,
Yeah,
to Shuto's
I mean,
credit, is something they've always done. Like Shuto's always produced top level talent.
Oh yeah, of course, because they had the solid, probably the best amateur league in Japan, right? That's where all
Right.
the good fighters are coming from. And just to mention, but this guy Patrick Usami, he won all 5 crowns as a high school boxer. So he's like a
Yes.
very, very known high school boxing national champion. And according to from what I heard, that many, many boxing gyms doesn't even want to come him to like spar with their boxer because he's too good. So he's having a little bit of difficulty finding good striking training. And just so you know, both Patrick Usami and Nia Nakamura are fighters that belong to LDH, which is
Mhm.
the like big entertainment company, and it's coached
Yeah.
by
That
Yushin Okami. You know,
right, and that's the entertainment company that kind of has the goal of creating world champions, right?
yeah, exactly. So here's what it is. I mean, I kept telling you this from a long while ago that Dreamers is like the only farm system of the Japanese MMA.
Right.
And I'm telling you, they have a very good looking talent next season too. And now obviously like Patrick Usami and Nia Nakamura. What do you think? Do you think they're ready to fight like maybe 5-0, even 6-7-0 guy, like the top solid guy from like America? Or
Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested in seeing it. I mean, they're both flawless to date, and
Mhm.
you kind of need to gauge them a little bit better against some higher level opponents.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering
And
because then Lia Nakamura to begin with, he is a very good like a wrestler to begin with, you know?
mhm, right. Well, it's the thing where it's like when you have guys that are that good at a particular
Mhm.
skill set. I mean, you have Nakamura with the wrestling, and you have Usami with the boxing. You
Yeah.
kind of need to test them against higher level guys just to make sure that they're learning the other aspects of MMA as well.
Right. And this is
Because I
my
think,
theory as a management, but if you're going to take a loss, it's better to take a loss early so you can learn
yeah,
from it, So, I mean,
right,
so right now it's probably a good timing for both guys to try out against the high level, I mean, I wouldn't say little higher level fighters,
yeah.
because I would say
Well,
their matchmaking is a little bit protected, It's not like they're really
right,
facing the real top guys there.
right. And now in the pandemic, what do you do during the pandemic? Do you just try to give them as good a competition as you can and build them up,
Well,
or
here's what it is. Actually, Charlie, I forgot. I should have mentioned this. The next subject I want to talk about is this one because that related to the next subject, which is a Pound Storm, which is a new promotion. It's actually a new event. It was announced in Japan, but not that many people are writing or talking about it, right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I mean, okay. Just so the our listeners know that the Pound Storm is the special event taking place April 25th in Ryogoku Kokugikan, which is like 12,000 seating sumo arena,
yeah. There's
and
been some cool events there in the past.
it's a big venue, and this venue is the same venue that won championship used when they came into Japan to do their show. And
Right.
LDH is an entertainment company, and it's co-promoted by LDH and Abema Television. So I'm hearing it's going to be a bunch of like a music performers, but also 10
Oh,
MMA fights scheduled. And as you could see on their
interesting.
website, I'm pretty sure the Patrick Usami and Nia Nakamura will be in this show.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm looking at the website right now.
yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
this probably by April 25th, I think they're hoping that the pandemic restriction will be a little different or more, maybe even the travel bans already will be lifted.
Mhm.
So, and this is obviously a show that has the budget
Right.
to fly fighters in from foreign country. So I think they're going to match them against somebody from outside Japan because
Yeah.
this is a show. It looks like they're going to shoot for the international quality kind of stuff. So
Right. Well, I mean, if
now,
you're putting it in that venue, I think you have high hopes for your first
oh, you
event.
have to, right? Because I'm telling you right now that they're very expensive venue.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, compared to like even Budokan, like a famous Budokan. I heard that the Budokan is almost half the cost of Ryogoku. Ryogoku is very expensive.
Plus, I mean, Ryogoku is. I imagine you have to do a bunch of work just to get a cage in there because you have
Oh
to.
yeah, oh yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
I'm interested to see what they do because I mean the Omicron cases are on the rise in Tokyo now, so I expect the get even stricter because I think it's over 4,000 people a day now.
right,
So,
yeah, exactly.
interesting.
But I mean, I'm hoping by April. I would like to go to Japan. I haven't been there in a while.
Yes.
I
Right.
mean,
Right.
and you know, since Okami is the coach for Patrick and Linya, and I'm pretty sure I'll have some involvement with this show too. So I kind of like to go back and check out this show if it's
Right.
possible.
Well, it's always nice to see like a new promotion's first show to see kind of how they get the ball rolling.
Right.
So this will be on Abema TV.
Yes, it will be on Abema TV. I
which
don't
is a
know if it's
giant
gonna be
streaming platform.
view or not, but and I'm pretty sure they're going to try to bring in a relatively big name, if they can from outside Japan, and they got to do something fancy, right, for 12,000 seating Ryogoku. And this is my big question. To go back to the fact that Shooto is no longer supported by one championship, but Abema is still very close with one championship, obviously, right? Because they're in hands. So I have a feeling one championship could send some fighters into this show, right?
Interesting. But does one championship? I mean, they shared a couple fighters with Shooto in the past, but that seemed very just to keep fighters busy. But they weren't publicly talking about how one wasn't giving them any fights.
I think it's difficult. I think I heard that the one in championship and Shooto, I mean, the sponsorship was only 3-year contract. So I think this is a point that they were supposed to renew it or not. So it's not like they got cut off. And I can't tell you this that it's totally confirmed. But what I heard is actually Shooto has decided to not continue.
Right, which kind of makes sense to me because Shooto seems to have bigger plans now, almost with Abema, with VTJ and other things. I feel like maybe they don't like the optics of the giant one logo on everything.
Maybe, right. And also the fact that I think in today's MMA, Japanese MMA, because pandemic and the way RIZIN has so many shows, I think it's difficult for Shooto to I wouldn't use the word force, but to have this contract to make sure that all the champion has to go to one championship kind of stuff.
Right.
So I think Shooto has realized that to be able to,
right.
to accommodate fighters, it's kind of difficult to be under their umbrella,
Plus, I mean, during the pandemic, a company in a different country isn't the best regional partner.
No, yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping. So here's what I'm hoping, and of course, I tell you this. Like I know people at Abema and stuff. Like so, when they ask me for some opinions, I am suggesting them to do a couple more medium-sized shows, which is like could be the Road to Poundstorm, which would be geared towards fighters from Dreamers. So it could be like fighters only 25 and under kind of stuff. Something that's different from the other shows,
Right.
But we'll see.
That makes sense because I mean, you always forget about the power of Abema. I mean, people that Mikuru fought on Abema are like mini celebrities now.
Right.
During its Street Fighter show. So Abema has a lot of reach.
I can do this right now. I think I said this on podcasts many, many times that Abema TV is half owned by TV Asahi, half owned by Cyber Agent. And Cyber Agent is the second largest ad agency in Japan behind Dentsu. So needless to say anything, that's a pretty big, it's a giant. And, so that's the kind of actually a company, it needs to really back up MMA to compete even against the Bellators or the UFCs or the PFLs, you know what I mean? Because it's just a limited thing you can do with only like 10 guys sitting on your office and try to run your own promotion.
Oh, yeah. You see like little mistakes start to climb through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'm hoping that this will make a little bit of different path in terms of in Japanese MMA because right now everybody's only going for RIZIN pretty much, right?
Well, it also seems to be creating an avenue for like what's the best way to say it? It's like the YouTubers famous, like reality's famous MMA fighter who's getting famous off this LDH show. Which kind of creates a new avenue for them. I don't want to associate it with like Triller or anything like that, but it creates a new avenue, kind of like how Landmark from Mikuru.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's always nice to have a new option for certain fighters.
I think obviously it seems like even one of our clients, like Ren Hiramoto, who only had one fight in RIZIN, but he's getting all the hypes and getting all the attentions, and obviously he's suited for shows like Landmark or like for Abema, right? It's basically for internet pay-per-view, It's a totally different market that Japanese MMA really never had, right?
Right, because the nice thing about Abima is, for the most part, it's free.
Yeah.
And there's no commercials or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of younger people enjoy it
Right.
because they can watch it on their phone.
Right.
I mean, I was watching the One Championship show last week, and I think in Japan there was like about 150,000 people watching the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so they get pretty good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, you do the math because even though they're pay-per-views, there's a different way to buy their pay-per-views. Depends on
Yes.
your membership, right? It's between like 3,500 yen to 4,500, whatever depends. I mean, if you let's say even 50, think about the money you're coming in, right? That's much higher than tickets you sold on Korakuen Hall.
Right.
So, and as if you could see on those viewership, I'm pretty sure they're selling pretty well, right? Some of the shows, right? So.
Well, I don't even think they care about the ticket sales anymore because I was watching the Shooto show and the crowd looked pretty empty.
Oh,
but
really?
I think that might just be because this was the first weekend where like the Corona numbers have significantly risen.
That's
I think
true.
people might have been hesitant to go out, but I don't know if Shooto cares because I think all they really care is about the Abima connections. Because I don't think they're making that much money from the ticket sales at a Korakuen Hall style event.
Here's what it is. I always said this, but let's compare this to like Invicta Fighting Championship. It's almost the same thing. They have a venue at 2,000 people kind of venue, right?
Yeah.
They rely more. Obviously, they rely that all the revenues from pay-per-views or sponsorship.
I remember going to an Invicta FC show where Mizuki fought. I think it was Carolina Kovalchevich.
Yeah,
I think it was in
Iowa. Right.
Was that in Iowa?
I think it was in Kansas, but it was a bigger venue than usual.
I saw her fight in Iowa once.
Huh?
Maybe.
No, I'm like have it in places. So.
No, she might that might have been.
Is it Beck Rawlings?
No. But I just remember that whenever we went, we were in a hotel and there was nothing else in the town. It was like in Davenport.
Right.
Jens Pulver was doing commentary. And
I remember Jens was there.
It's kind of funny because you go to the event because you're so used to watching it on Fight Pass, and you realize that there's like 100 people. There's like nobody has come to watch this show. That their entire business model is built off of the stream, which is the modern way to do it. That's what money is.
But it only makes sense, right? I mean, so you don't have to rely on those ticket sales. You don't have to actually, rely on
the grand scale of things. Those ticket sales are nothing compared to what you could make from streaming.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Right, and it could be all free tickets. Who knows? Just to back the seats, right? I mean, so I mean, in the same way, I think it's obviously because of Abima TV. I think Japanese MMA has found a different, revenue. For
because I got to say, I was watching the replay of RIZIN 33 on Fuji Television because we recorded it, and that is an awful pace at which to watch MMA.
Really?
I mean, they really. When you're at the live venue, the break between some of the rounds are longer than a minute. Like, what's kind of going on over here? And then you realize it's just another commercial break because Fuji TV is just pumping out the commercials. So it's such a slower pace that I can't take it. But Abima has no commercials. I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled by Abima.
Right. So I'm telling you, Abima is really for the younger audience, and I'm telling you, when I watched that like a series Succession, and they say like when the guy is trying to buy a local TV station, the other guy says, "TV, is that the little box you see on the corner of the gym?"
Yeah,
I think that's what it is, right? I think basically for the young guys. Well, anyway, so to go back to let's talk about RIZIN. I think everybody in Japan still talk about Shibatar and Kubo, and RIZIN.
I think it was bad timing,
right?
I think it was bad timing because this happened, and then there was nothing else to happen for a while. So everyone's been focusing on this because no other RIZIN announcements have been made. And this is just kind of floating in the air of the major controversy from the New Year's Eve event.
What point is this? I mean, it seems like only the Japanese media, only the Japanese fans are talking about this. I hear almost like nothing from outside Japan.
Well, I mean, the details of it are almost funny now. I mean, Kubo is claiming that he has Asperger's and ADHD.
Yeah.
So he's easily manipulated. And Shibatar is saying the fight was never fixed.
Yeah.
That he said it was fixed to make Kubo drop his guard because it was his strategy to win the fight to make Kubo think it wasn't a real fight. And then Sakakibara's comment is there's a clause in the contract against fight fixing, but there's nothing in the contract about pretending to fix a fight to get an advantage over your opponent. So there's nothing we can do about it. But in the future, we're thinking of adding a clause that says that. And
Well,
it
here's what
reminded me of what you said about how the contracts really aren't that important.
right, and the bottom line is that wasn't totally fixed because they didn't decide on a finish, right? They
Right.
didn't decide on
And
ending. Yeah, so it
it
was like
wasn't
a
finished because
agreement.
Shibatar was never intending to do what he said he was going to do.
Right. So it was he played a mind game, and the
Yes.
mind game that they made Kubo think they had some kind of a gentleman's agreement. They
Right.
didn't, basically, right? So,
Right.
but I think I wanted to ask you this because I get a lot of emails and calls from like sponsors and stuff like my fighters sponsors and some people who doesn't think good thing about the RIZIN, and they're like all complaining, and I can't believe the Sakakibara decided to not penalize these two guys. Like they didn't ban Shibata, he didn't ban Kubo, and that's a bad decision making, and it sent a bad message to the public. And some sponsor even called me and yap and said like you should have them release Naoki and Ruka and everybody because just because of this fixed fight issues, UFC will never sign anybody from RIZIN anymore. I mean, has nothing to do with that, but like they get very over dramatic about this.
My whole thing about it was, I think that RIZIN doesn't want to open this can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they want to have the discussion about fight fixing.
Right. I mean, is there any? I mean, do you think they have to clarify and penalize Shibata to begin with to Kubo?
Well, I think some people want that. Like I've noticed mainly foreign fans want that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my impression, Japan has always been a lot less legal centric than the US.
Yeah.
And I thought that this probably got resolved behind closed doors.
Of course.
And Shibatar already announced that he's not fighting again. Now we'll see if that actually happens.
You do not believe anything what Shibata said. Everything's act for him. And after this video, after this announcement, I saw that Shibata was dancing around, all relieved that he's not getting sued, right?
Right.
And announced
I think Shibatar has a good point in that you have no grounds to sue me. The fight wasn't actually fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think RIZIN wants to like open this up because that's just going to bring up like what the old Takada Coleman stuff and some of the stuff from the past. I don't think they want any of that being brought back up. And I think they just want this to go away. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Right. And do you think RIZIN ever going to use Shibata again?
I mean, if the situation's right, yeah, they'll use him again.
You know what? This is my big prediction because I don't know anything about it. That's why I'm saying this, because usually I can't say something I don't know. I don't know anything about this, but this is my prediction. Do you remember when RIZIN did the little skit using Jake Paul impersonator?
Yes.
Right. So, and you remember Sakakibara was in Florida? And maybe a lot of people suspect that maybe he went to see one of Paul's or both, whatever.
Right.
And I don't know Paul brothers are famous enough in Japan, but I think if you're an entertainment promoter, you will always leave that door open for the possibility, just a slight possibility, that maybe Shibata versus one of those Paul brothers.
Well, especially now that one of them is training in MMA, it looks like, right?
You're right. So it might make sense, right? If Paul brothers became big enough in Japan.
Right.
So in that sense, I guess it doesn't make sense to totally cut off Shibata just to see what he's going to generate for this year.
No, I wouldn't cut him off just because, if they did Shibatar versus Kubo again, I think it would generate a lot of interest. I think that the way that they're able to make stories work with through RIZIN Confessions and how they promote, they could make Shibatar or Kubo successful if they fought again.
Exactly, and in the bottom line is I think Sakakibara confirmed that he will use them again, right?
Right.
Basically,
not to be like 100% believer of the phrase "all press is good press," but the controversy did bring a lot of attention.
Yeah, it did.
Videos talking about it were generating over 1 million views.
Right.
And it seemed like a lot of the YouTubers who are friends of Shibatar were just like, "Oh, Shibatar, you're so stupid and funny." And so it seems like it was almost like a gag the whole time.
Right. So, and the general public is actually, when they talk about New Year's Eve fight, most of them talk about Shibatar and Kubo now. You
Right,
know,
and
no one's like they all forgot about the bantamweight Grand Prix or like
yeah,
everything. You know.
I do think an important factor of it is that it always felt like a pro wrestling match,
Yeah, of
and
course.
that it was kind of a ridiculous match from the beginning.
Hmm.
I mean, I would think we'd be having a very different discussion if Kai versus Ogikubo was a fixed fight than if Shibatar
Exactly.
versus Kubo was. Yeah,
Right, because everybody sort of expected that even if it's not a fix, there has to be some kind of gentleman's agreement or mutual agreement,
yeah,
right?
because when Shibatar's running around like an idiot, a skilled fighter can just knock him out during that.
Right,
So there
right,
has to be some type of agreement to let him do that kind of stuff.
right. And I think from my point of view, I think Japanese public, some very harsh, you know, critics are being too harsh and calling them,
Right.
labeling them that was a fixed fight and blah blah blah. Because to me, that's almost like a sort of like a unwritten rules in Major League Baseball. It's almost the same.
Right.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, it just I feel like hardcore Japanese fight fans are super strict and
very
super quick to jump on people.
right.
And it's not MMA fans, but I mean, the classic example would be the pro wrestler that killed herself due to online bullying.
Hmm.
I just feel like some of these guys have no lives and they just spend all of their time online criticizing,
Oh
criticizing,
no.
criticizing. And and a recent example of it that we can segue into is Panchan Rina has been receiving a lot of hate online recently.
Oh
Have you
yeah,
noticed?
because she was asking to do a kickboxing rules fight against somebody instead of MMA rules.
Right. She
Right.
said she wants to fight Siwoo Park, who she's fought before in kickboxing.
That's true,
So
right?
she was
Yeah.
like, I want to, she was like, Siwoo Park, let's do a kickboxing match in Rising.
Hmm.
And I don't think Siwoo Park had an issue. Her response was just, I'm not really concentrating on kickboxing right now. I'm an MMA fighter. If you
Right.
want to have an MMA fight, we can fight under MMA rules.
Hmm.
And then afterwards, I think Panchan released a video where she said, at one point I thought about fighting in MMA, but my goal right now is to just concentrate on kickboxing and to bring kickboxing to a global stage. Which, I mean, all fine comments to make, but these fans went absolutely nuts. Like, how dare you not want to fight in MMA? Why are you in an MMA promotion if you're not going to fight in MMA? And they're all like, she used to be like an idol and like
Hmm.
a model, and they're all digging up these like videos of her and stuff and posting it all over line and making fun of her. And my whole thing is just like, she's never said that she was an MMA fighter. She's always maintained she's a kickboxer.
Right.
And you guys are freaking out over absolutely nothing. I mean, you can dislike her, that's fine, but you don't have to like berate her publicly online nonstop.
You know what? I think it's Japanese are very, in general, they're very critical, harsh on one mistake. Because I think
Right.
the big difference between American corporation and Japanese corporation in Japan, if you make one mistake, you get demoted, and you will need like
Right.
10 good stuff to make that up. In
Right.
America, it's the other way around. You can make like 10 little mistakes. Who cares? If you do one thing, you're gonna talk about that forever, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So no, I'm telling you, there's too much pressure for everything
Well,
in Japan.
what's kind of weird too, because I don't even see it. I don't think she made a mistake.
Not at all.
People just, I think people just want to see her in an MMA fight because she's in Rising, and I think she's wisely. I think it's a smart move is not doing it because she has no grappling experience at all. I mean,
Right.
she's barely gotten into kickboxing,
And
and
RIZIN have
so
tried women's kickboxing, obviously. So it's not like
yeah,
she's asking to create a brand new division
right,
or yeah. So I mean, come on, right? I
yeah,
feel bad for her. You
yeah.
know, you get
So
bashed on those Twitters and
no, I
social
mean, they are
media.
because she did all those, like, stupid idol videos where it's like, "In this video, I'm gonna be making noises like a cat," or, "In this video, I'm gonna be eating a popsicle," or something like that, and they're just, like, pulling all that stuff up.
That's too bad. That's too bad. I
Yeah.
hope people stop that, find something better to do. And now
Yeah.
let's talk about this one real quick because no fights confirmed for Rising Landmark and Trigger Show. Are
So my
you?
wife my
Yeah.
wife and her friends were last night, they like, the New Year's Eve, like, hangover is finally over, the bliss from New Year's Eve, and they
Hmm.
all realized, they were like, "Wait a minute, not a single like, no fights have been announced for the show that is happening in, like, less than a month. What
Well,
is
here it
going
is.
on?"
All we know is the clever Koike is fighting in Shizuoka.
Yes.
And I
Right.
can tell you right now, Ren Hiramoto is fighting Landmark, but Landmark dates are not announced yet, and Shizuoka dates are announced, but no cards announced yet.
Right.
I can tell you right now, in terms of Shizuoka, a couple of our clients are getting offered to fight, so I think the fight cards are ready to be announced.
Right. So
Landmark, I don't know.
my brief comment is Landmark doesn't need it because Landmark is primarily a pay-per-view.
Exactly, and they're
And
probably like 4 or 5 fights, right? At most, even
yeah.
4. Right.
So Landmark's not as important. Trigger is a different story where
Right.
Trigger is like going to have, I mean, I don't know what the COVID restrictions are going to be, but I think they want to have a live audience at Trigger.
Oh
So
yeah, I think
they should
they're
announce some
using
of the
the same
fights.
venue in Shizuoka, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, it's too bad they're not. But I wonder who Kleber is going to fight.
Right. Because it's still so close to New Year's Eve.
I personally think, all right, this is like I think if some Japanese who understands English are listening to this, it might make a noise about it. But I personally think Kleber should fight Dark Rick Shirakawa at this point because he's
Okay.
won 3 in a row, and not much other featherweights are available. It seems like, right? I mean,
Right. Because I mean, a lot of these rising stars have to be exhausted still from the
right,
end of 2021. I would
exactly.
give them all a break.
The guys like Kanehara only fought once, and Majima already
Yeah.
fought Kleber, and Horiez, I think he has injury, right?
Right.
So,
I think Kanehara is also an interesting fight.
right, interesting fight, but I think it would make sense for him to get maybe 1 or 2 more wins
Sure.
to fight the Kleber. So the guy right now, actually on a 3-fight winning streak, would be Shirakawa,
Yes.
or 2-fight winning streak, but Hagiwara, right?
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't think you put Hagiwara in there yet.
No, if I'm a matchmaker, I would never put Hagiwara against Kleber.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense at all in terms of
No.
fight style. I mean, it makes 0 sense, right? So,
To have everyone watch Hagiwara get murdered would not
right.
be fun.
But for some reason, my client, one of my clients, Ren Hiramoto, is going beef with Shirakawa. I mean, Shirakawa on social network now, right?
But like, who doesn't he not start beef with? I mean, I
Exactly.
saw him. I saw a sign with it. I saw him with a bunch of people holding a sign like F Mikuru in the background. So
Oh,
was it Mikuru or was it?
I don't know. I will be honest with you here that I mean I do check my clients' social network and stuff like that, but I guess I haven't checked every single one of Ren's tweet or somebody who wrote back to Ren, whatever. But I missed that photo. So
It might have been Mikuru. It might have been Hagiwara. I can't remember. I just remember somebody holding an F. It must have been Mikuru because Hagiwara is way too long of a name to write on a poster board.
yeah, I mean, so I guess there's different world. I mean, I think it's a little different from like so-called old traditional hardcore fans, right? Like the MMA.
Right.
Anyway, so it's a different crowd there. So I personally think Shirakawa should fight Kleber, but for some reason, many fans believe that Ren should fight Shirakawa, and they're like, even like I pointed out on Twitter early this morning that no, we never discussed about Shirakawa with RIZIN, not even once.
Right.
Not even the word Shira or not even word Kawa. And the next thing I know, I get like 500, like likes and everything else. So
Yeah. I mean, this just. Why do you think is causing them to have such a delay in announcing the card?
I honestly don't know the real reason. I can predict few, but those few predictions are something I can't really talk here.
I mean, without getting too deep into it, my general gut reaction is that all of their stars are kind of burnt out and they're having to scrap together a card filled with maybe one good fight, 1 or 2 good fights, and then just a bunch of like prospects or veteran fights.
Right. And I think maybe because of the Shibata and Kubo deal, they're looking to maybe push Landmark a little bit, behind
Yes.
Trigger instead of before Trigger. The Trigger is already announced, so they have to go forward with it, right? So I think they're still adjusting.
Right.
And personally, if they push Landmark after Trigger, I like that better because I still like to try to bring Duke Rufus and Sergio Perez to corner Ren. But right now with the quarantine, it's almost impossible, right? So
Right.
So
where do you think, any guesses on what Landmark they want to have it at?
Oh,
Last time was Tokyo Tower.
Yeah. Well, here's what it is. I can talk about this right now. They had the little discussion about doing. It was way before Landmark. It was just the idea. It was never offered or anything like that. But if they were to do Mikuru against Ren, that kind of fight, they were discussing the idea of doing the pay-per-view show and selling only maybe 100 tickets for exclusive 100 members for like $10,000 each, and do this at the foot of Mount Fuji. Because
That'd be
in Japan,
awesome.
there's a interesting, big music festival called Fuji Rock.
Right.
Well, why not do a Fuji Island show? Because in the pro wrestling world, they had the Ganryu Island fight, right?
Yes.
Between Antonio Inoki and Mr. Saito and stuff like that. So in the same way, they discussed, and they also discussed about doing this on the foot of a Tokyo Tower too, which the first landmark ended up being somewhere near the Tokyo Tower, right? So
Right. Now that we know that by landmark they mean you're not going to see we'll be relatively close to a landmark,
yeah,
and we'll show it in the opening VTR. It
but
could be anywhere, but
it could be any. It could be like I don't know. I forgot. I think Genki Sudo or somebody has held not an MMA fight, but some fight event, grappling event or something, in relatively same and famous big temple, and it looked
that's what I
really
would
nice. Yeah, you know.
that's what I'm interested in, because that brings out like my inner child Mortal Kombat / Street Fighter background.
Exactly. Perhaps maybe temple with a big statue in the background, whatever,
Yeah,
you know. It's like,
exactly.
yeah. So no, I'm really hoping Landmark to do something like that, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So
Rick.
let's hope, and we'll see. I really don't know anything about Landmark, you know. So we'll see,
Right.
you know. Now, before we go more, I want to talk about Deep Jewels because, you know, it seems like Deep gets all the fighters from RIZIN. Anyone
Well,
who wins in RIZIN gets the shot in Deep, you know.
it's smart because it makes the relationship so beneficial to both companies.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, I mean, this show has Saudi Oshima on it, and Nisei, and Siwoo Park, who have all won in Rising, and they're
Right. So
all
it's
fighting on
almost
a
like,
Deep Jewels card now, which has got to help Deep Jewels sell tickets and get
oh,
attention.
I mean, here's what it is. I know for the fact that Deep Jewels almost never had a problem selling tickets.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, not just because it's not like they do in a big venue, but also at the same time they really have a real solid fan base.
hmm
So if the venue is like 600 people, like a Shinjuku Face, they pretty sell out pretty quick.
Well, this venue is also a smaller venue, but I love this venue. It's New Pier Hall, and it's
Right. I haven't
essentially,
been there yet, but how big is it? What's the capacity there? Like,
I want to say, my guess, 500 to
Mhm.
600 people,
Okay, yeah, all right,
but it's inside of a hotel that's used for wedding venues.
nice.
So it's a super nice hotel. Like I'm talking like giant bathrooms, like red carpet everywhere. It's like the
Really?
opposite of like the grungy kind of Korakuen Hall or
So
Shinjuku
that's
Face
that's
kind of
actually
vibe.
good for Deep Jewels. That it's a female fight, like in Japanese
Yeah.
for marketing by wedding, you know, like kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ah,
So I like that venue a lot. And this card to me is just absolutely stacked. And it's not even finished yet. I think it's also supposed to have the opening round of their flyweight Grand Prix.
yeah, it's
And
supposed to, right?
what does that mean? That to me means either Shizuka Sugiyama, Kate Lotus, any of those super popular fighters, Yukari Nabe, any of those popular fighters in that division are also going to be
Or
at this
even our
card.
favorite Miss Lin Nakai, because I
One can hope.
see her
One can dream.
retweeting about Jewels, Deep Jewels. You
I
know?
will tell you that I'm writing an article, kind of like a wrap up on women's MMA in Japan in 2021.
Uh-huh.
And one of the top trending Google searches for was Ren Nakai.
I
And the
bet.
context of it was like essentially wins her next fight. It was the number one search for Rin Nakai in
I
2021.
hope, I really hope she fights for Deep Jewels then, because when you really think about it, look at this card. It's almost really well done, stacked. If you have like a flyweight tournament with Lin Nakai in there, it's almost competitive to like Invicta fighting level, right? Almost.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
oh,
So that's
I think
very
I think
impressive.
I may be biased, but I think it's at that level. I think it is at the Invicta level, at this card at least.
At least.
And
Right.
and other thing worth noting is atomweight division. All the girls fighting atomweight now are fighting 49 kilo at Deep
Mm-hmm.
Jewels.
Mm-hmm.
And Miki Matono has dropped from strawweight
Sure.
to 49 kilo.
Right.
The last event, Sayaki said, there's no strawweights in Japan. You're going to have to drop. and it looks like it's happening. And I think
I
Saudi
know.
Oshima, Miki Motono, these are all they're all studs. It's going to be
Now,
great.
let me ask you this. There's an article out on ESPN said that the UFC might add atomweight by end of this year. I mean, if this happens, I think, and if Izawa probably will do a rematch against Hamasaki in around June, and if she wins again, I mean, she's got to be the one of the hottest commodity out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of laughing because I was looking at the Google Trends, and her name was a 000. The New Year's Eve blip. Google
Oh,
searches for her name is launched in December. So I think she's a hot commodity. But I mean, she's not. Japan has a ton of super good atomweights, but my initial reaction to that, though, is that there's been rumors of the UFC having the atomweight division for years now,
mm-hmm,
and I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
Because I think they want stars like Michelle. I think they want Michelle Watterson to be a star.
Oh,
She
I mean,
clearly be a better atomweight.
Watterson or Angela Lee or
Or
even
Jessica Penne. They have a ton
right.
of atomweights already.
And
Loma Lokbami.
exactly, and also even girl like Kala might be able to drop. Who knows, right? Not
Yeah.
that big, and yeah, exactly. He only makes. It's starting to kind of make sense. I'm hoping that's going to happen because that's going to open the door to a lot of Japanese fighters as well. You
Well,
know?
that's my thought process has always been is if Japan is serious about Asia. I mean, if UFC is serious about making it in Asia, I mean, all the Asian promotions, all the women now are atomweights. They're not big enough. There's not enough big enough people to do 125, 135, 115. So if you really want to do well, atomweight's kind of the division to lean
I'm
into.
telling you right now, though, but like for example, like a Tyra signed with Iridium, and now he's training in the Extreme Couture for just a month, coming back, hoping to maybe sign with the UFC, which a lot of other people. And I think right now it's so hard to get signed with the UFC. I
Yeah.
mean, we have like, for example, we have a lot of Brazilians with like 10-0, 15
Well,
and 12,
it's the problem if you're a Brazilian. There's so many Brazilian fighters that unless you have some like unique brand, they're just not
exactly. So
interested.
I mean, I'm not saying that UFC matchmakers never told me this, but some other matchmakers on the other promotion have told me that it's dime a dozen,
Yeah.
when it comes to Brazilian. So
It's kind of like what Russians are now. Oh, you got a good Russian wrestler? Okay. Is
true,
Khabib going to be in his corner promoting his fight? Because if he isn't,
right,
we're not interested.
right. And the point is that in terms of Japanese fighters, if you're good and if you're winning in RIZIN, if you're a champion there, of course you have a championship clause. It's not like it's so easy to get out. And obviously by that point you'll be making way better money than 12-12 or 14-14 to start. You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's kind of difficult.
I think getting back to not the UFC, but with the atomweight division in Japan, I think the pandemic has kind of forced it to grow.
Yes, in a way.
I think Rising's old strategy of bringing in foreign fighters wasn't good for the division. It
Mm-hmm.
allowed them to build stars, but it didn't because they were just kept using the same three women over and over again. And now, since they've been forced to kind of use internal fighters, it's helped this new generation step up to the plate.
Right. Oh,
And
same thing for the men's too, right? That's why they
right,
did the 16-man bantamweight tournament, and I think the fans are predicting maybe featherweight or the flyweight tournament this year,
right.
right? So that's going to create another stars.
So it's almost been like an adrenaline shot to the heart of like the Japanese MMA scene
Mm-hmm.
because now all these fighters are like fighting and rising isn't a crazy idea anymore. This is a realistic option. If
Right.
I put a couple wins together, I could get the call up this year. I mean,
Right.
Saudi Oshima, what made her and Seike Izawa both made their debuts in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and a year later it was like, oh, we're fighting in rising. So I mean, now's the time.
Yeah, now is the time. That's why, and I think that's the reason why we are not really seeing two. I only see three Japanese fighters in UFC.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, it's super hard because the UFC has the contenders and the Ultimate Fighters and looking for a fight, and there's three other ways to get in there, right?
Right.
And I'm telling you, we have a couple of really good looking Brazilians. If it was like 20, 21, is
Yeah.
undefeated in 10, 15 fights, ready to go, but it just can't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So some are actually even spending money or using sponsorship money to do O1 visa, which costs like $6,000, and move to
Oh,
Vegas
wow.
or somewhere and sit and wait, train and wait kind of stuff. Still not getting calls.
Yeah.
It,
Interesting.
it
I mean,
is.
what would you recommend? Is it almost better to go to another promotion in North America and just dominate and try to get your name into the North American press? Or
Oh, Jesus, it's really hard because,
yeah.
I'm telling you right now, like, I think that it depends on the way you look at it. I tell you this right now. Like, for example, Pancras champion Isao. Obvious, he's probably got an offer from RIZIN. And
Right.
obvious, he's not taking it. And I heard that he got the offer from the other promotions on the besides the UFC. I heard he's saying no to every single one of them. So he's only thinking about probably UFC. But he's 33. Sure,
Yeah.
he's on like 5-fight win streak, whatever that is. But what are the chances of him getting in there, right?
Yeah, because you always hear rumors about the UFC matchmakers. If you get to a certain age level, unless you're an exceptional case, they're just not interested. Because why are
Not
they going to put money in promoting you if you're kind of going to age out soon?
unless if they, let's say, for they're doing like a show in Macau where the Japanese doesn't
Right.
require visa and somebody gets injured in the last minute. Same theory applies to whatever the place.
Mhm.
I think Dutch also doesn't need Japanese visa,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
Japanese shows or whatever, right? So we don't have any of that right now.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really funny. So like, to go back to like some Japanese fighters, I can't name names. Like for example, I know some fighters like young. If they put up maybe 2-3 wins, good solid wins, they might get picked by UFC. I mean not by UFC, but now they're good enough to get picked by RIZIN. Now they fight for smaller promotion. It's hard to fight somebody who is good. That if you win, you have to win against a good guy, right?
Right.
To sell yourself to UFC. So you know what some of the fighter decides to do? They want to follow the path of Michinori Tanaka. What Tanaka did was he said no to all the good offers in Japan, but he wanted to fight for LFA because he just believed winning in LFA is the way to get to the UFC. Only thinking UFC, almost like a UFC addict. But to be able to fight in LFA, so what Mr. Tanaka did was he paid for his own visa, which was $6,000. He had to pay for his own flight to get there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Train at the team and go with the LFA fight, and he fought for 1,750 to show, 1,750 to win. So you do the math, right?
Yeah.
So, but there are other fighters in the same shoes who's like late 20s who probably may have a chance to go to maybe Bellator or PFL or in somewhere else, but
Right.
he's just only thinking UFC. And I suggest him to then why don't you fight in the RIZIN for 1 or 2 fights, right? Go there. No,
Mhm.
no, 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 RIZIN. What about LFA?
It's interesting because I don't know the exact numbers, but I've always thought that the clearest road to the UFC through Japan was through Pancrase. They seem to have some magic where their fighters just tend to end up in the UFC.
Yeah, but I think, and also some of the fighters from deep went there, so is Shooto, right? But not too often, right, these days.
But I just don't like the sitting out strategy. I would rather you go to Rising, win a couple fights, get the attention of maybe not the UFC, maybe go to Bellator, like you said, maybe go to the PFL. The UFC can't be the only option.
That's what I keep telling to many fighters. I believe me, but there are more than a few coaches end up telling me and say like, "Shoot, forget it. My boy is UFC addict." Like,
I mean,
so
even if you think the UFC has the best fighters in the world, go to the PFL. If you win, you get $1 million. I mean, that's got to be attractive to some people.
I, you know what, Charlie? I have told that to few of the guys who actually got an official offer from PFL and
Not
tell me
interested.
they're just saying no.
Interesting. It's
And
interesting that the UFC's brand is so strong with some of the generation because in my opinion, the UFC has like done so little in the
in
Japanese
Japan,
market.
right. I mean,
Whereas
Bellator did way more, right? And
Bellator has done more and it's worked. I think a lot of the younger generations like, hey, UFC or Bellator, either one.
actually, younger generation might even prefer Bellator because of
Right.
RIZIN and the fact that they might be to go back and forth between RIZIN and Bellator and fight.
I think that's a very attractive thing that's not talked about is the
It,
ability that Bellator is like you can fight in Japan and for Bellator.
it actually is a very attractive thing for the Japanese fighters because many of the Japanese clients are telling me that they prefer fighting in front of their supporters.
Right.
So they can show. It's not like there's fans and supporters can all fly to America to watch UFC, right? So
Well, it's got to make it easier for them to get other sponsors too, because I mean, does your sponsor care if you're like a local place in Japan? Does it care that it's being broadcast in the U.S.? Like that's not going to have any return on investment if that's what you're worried. If you're using it for advertising, and not
Exactly.
just
It's
supporting.
really funny because I deal with a set of sponsors who is in love with UFC, who
Right.
supports our UFC clients. But there's a set of rising lover sponsors,
Mhm.
and they tend to contradict each other. You know what I mean? Like,
Would
and
would that rising lover happen to be rising Daisuke, or is it?
no, I have nothing to do with it. But I heard he's back in the scene, right? But anyway,
His name's creeped back up. There's no way he can stay out.
yeah, I know. Maybe he's addicted, right? Somehow, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So exactly, right. I mean, so so UFC sponsored guys tells me like, sure, you should be able to get a better sponsors if your fighters are in the UFC, meaning the better Japanese sponsors. But that's
Right.
not necessarily true because sponsors think about the exposures in the Japanese market.
Right. Like
Yeah.
if you're sponsoring a fighter that's fighting in a different country, unless you're a global brand,
Hmm.
and unless you're only doing this like to support the fighter, there's gonna
Right.
be very little return on investment.
Exactly. There are a lot of sponsors in Japan. The president or owner happen to be he has a huge love for MMA. So it's not about the return on investment.
Right.
It's I just support you kind of stuff. So for them, yeah, UFC is the place because they can, brag about, hey, I'm
Right.
sponsoring the guy who is in the best league in the world and blah blah blah. But for the guys who is paying for the return on investment for a big sponsorship, like guys from Mikuru or guys on, like in Naoki on national television, that's a different concept. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. Because I mean, I always laugh like you go to some of these regional shows, like who are these guys? People sponsoring people on regional shows just must not care about advertising. They must
No.
just like the fighter, and it's like here's $100. Good luck with your
Yeah.
training camp.
On
But
top
once
of
you get on
that,
TV,
because some of the sponsorship logo there's like white background, so it depends on the lights. It's almost you can't see it because you
right,
know
exactly.
right. So I don't think it's about that. I think
Or you're one of those. I mean, kickboxers in Japan are like NASCARs. They're just absolutely plastered in sponsors. Like
right.
when Koji comes out, he wears that jacket. There's just like double-sided sponsors all the way down. There's no way anybody can actually read what one of those says.
Sure.
So
But
yeah,
here's what it is: the kickboxing in Japan, as I think we talked about this, I think they traditionally I wouldn't say swallow, but they just understand the fact that just the fight price is not that high.
right.
So they have been a long established way to score those little sponsors,
Yep.
you know. So they're
Hustling.
making way more money from sponsors and also ticket sales.
Right?
You
They
know,
got to hustle. They got to go out there to the mom and pop shops, get the
right, right.
$200 from the yakiniku place, go to the ramen shop, get $100.
Oh, I know. Oh my god, I know. Right. So anyway, so
There's actually a ramen shop near my house that sponsors like a ton of athletes. I think they
really,
might. Well, they're involved. They have some relationship with Sonic Squad. I
uh-huh.
think Naoki actually eats ramen there, but they sponsor
Actually,
like
yeah, that sponsor actually owns the chain of ramen shop. So
okay
in a
because
different brand.
they on their wall they sponsor like 3 or 4 boxers, a
Oh,
couple
really?
of
I can see that. All
golfers.
right. And
So
you
they
see there like a signed autograph of used to have
exactly
happen. Well, yeah, we include that on a part of the sponsor package deal.
yeah.
You try to make that attractive to try to price it nice and
Well, I
stuff.
think
So
the mom and pop restaurants like that. You put a little sign up on the wall. People are like, "Oh, who's that?" He always asks about Naoki, like when he's fighting and stuff when we go in. So yeah,
yeah, exactly. So I think it does have a pretty good effect, right, on the grab new customers, and
yeah,
also, I mean, they feel good about it.
right,
Yeah, and
exactly.
we actually even include some of the high paying sponsors who really dying to get a backstage pass. Actually, they like that.
Oh my,
So we provide them an experience. The next
yeah,
thing I get a phones, like photos of like him like posing with all the fighters on the backstage.
yeah, yeah, dude, man. They used to do that. I think Rising used to do like a backstage tour
Right,
back
right.
when they were like trying to scrape some bucks from random
One
places.
championship used to do that too. They even had to tour people who coming into the like a dressing room, like before the fight and stuff like that. And
but
there
But no public weigh-ins, Shu. No public weigh-ins. You can watch the fighters get naked and change, but
That's
you
true.
can't
You know
watch them
what?
weigh
There
in.
are some fans with the camera wanted to take a photo with Okami when he was like hitting pads, like getting ready to go fight in like 10 minutes kind of stuff. So that was a little bit, right? I mean,
That might be the most won championship thing I've ever heard because I
you
just
know,
remember what were those emails they sent out where it's like, are you an amateur photographer? Do you have a
yeah, I
camera?
saw that,
We'll
right.
give you a free ticket if you come take pictures of fighters and
But here's what it is, though. It doesn't really bother me so much because it does create the walk of those photographers, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and
Well, I mean, everybody benefits from it, but
right. So, but actually, when I went to Myanmar with Ken Hasegawa when he fought Olan, yeah, and it was just so many like photographers, and some of them I can tell they're not, real
oh, yeah.
professional photographers, but they're fans, or whatever. They want to take a photo, which is fine. But where they storm into us was just not really professional. It was a little scary because
No, I think that's what one championship wants. I think they want to be able to take
you know,
video of being
exactly.
like, our fighters are like the Beatles. Look at the photographers storming them as they get off the bus.
Yeah, I get that, right? Yeah, but it was just a little,
Yeah.
little too much.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought.
One
Especially
championship
in
being too
Myanmar,
much.
it was just amazing because he was a national hero there.
What's that? Before the recent military coup, hopefully.
Oh yeah, that's right. I feel
But,
sorry for there. I mean,
yeah, but speaking of King, I've been genuinely surprised at King Kazu's son, Miura. He has like the rising fan base is just so behind that guy now. Rising Confessions turned that guy into a superstar.
I mean, actually, he looks pretty good. I mean, it looks like he has been training. I mean, obviously.
And I think he is perfect for a trigger show. Like put him in the co-main. Because don't do the sacrificial lamb route. Like don't have him fight Vanderlei Silva next. Have him fight someone his level.
Right. No. I think they're gonna raise Miura slowly and nicely for Rising. It only makes sense. It's a real hot commodity.
And how do you feel about? Did you see like the poster for the Ishiwatari retirement event?
I
in Deep?
love that. I
The
love that.
poster is
It looks like a
badass. I
Japanese
need to find
enka.
it somewhere.
Right. Japanese ballad singers recital. Right.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
It's awesome.
And
I love it. It's only in Japanese MMA, I think.
I feel like Deep's been upping their production value recently. They're kind of like trying to mirror what Rising does. And that poster and everything looks so different.
Right now, I hate to say this, but among Deep, Pancras, Shooto, Deep is just getting it's just not like a Bob. It's just getting better than the other.
I love Pancrase, but I think Pancrase took the wrong strategy during the pandemic. I think they were kind of like, we're going to try to wait this out. And I think that ended up not being the smart move because it's such a long pandemic. It's just impossible to wait out. And
I wonder why. Is that because of the Deep relationship? But I don't see too many Pancras pushing Rising at all, right? I mean, and after all, that's that stage that all the general public watches. So you only make that is there.
Saki is such a businessman over at Pancrase.
Sakai.
I'm sorry, Sakai is such a businessman. And like he used to make money by just buying wrestling organizations, fixing them up and selling them, right? I mean, you got to think like he probably doesn't like losing money. Do you think he's ever thinking of selling Pancrase one day?
Well, I think he has tried, but it didn't work. And now I can't talk about it, but I think there'll be new announcement pretty soon. I think he's restructuring, I think, the organization, I would say. So, yeah, well, Daniels keep asking what's the situation about the Pancras announcement. I can't talk about it, but I'm pretty sure they will pretty soon, Well,
it just seems because when you go to Pancrase, they have like such a high production value. And it's such a shame that they don't have like a foreign streaming service at the moment. And I know that they're looking for that. You probably can't say anything, but I know that they're looking for that.
That's true. They don't have UFC Fight Pass anymore,
So I'd like to see something because it's like a waste because they use such a nice camera. They always put their events in cool venues and they deliver. I mean, I think Team Date needs to be more visible to the world. So I'd just like to see Pancrase have like a foreign streaming option. I mean, I know I probably bring this up all the time, but I was talking to Stuart Fullerton, the guy that's who was the English commentator for Pancrase, and he was talking about how he's surprised more organizations don't really copy Stardom's business model, where Stardom essentially has their own version of Fight Pass,
Yeah.
and people just pay a monthly subscription to watch all their matches, and it generates a ton of income for Stardom with them having to do very little work. I mean, I think in the beginning they just found a fan who was passionate, who did most of it for free, and now that they're making money, they just pay for it themselves.
So maybe that's almost same as doing your own pay-per-view on YouTube channel too. Then almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think isn't that what Deep Jewels are right now on YouTube? Instead
No,
of
Deep
using
Jewels has a pay-per-view, but then
Okay.
Deep Jewels does a domestic pay-per-view. I think you can buy it abroad,
Mm.
but I think it costs like it's the stupid Japanese thing where if you like order it a couple days in advance, it's cheaper.
Mhm.
So I think it costs like 20 or 30 bucks to buy a
Okay.
Deep Jewels pay-per-view. But then I think usually like 3 or 4 days later, they upload all the fights on YouTube.
You do, right? So you just wait 2, 3, 4 days. It's just like in RIZIN almost, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
guess.
it's a smart business model because if you're going to if you want to watch it live, you're going to pay for the pay-per-view.
Mhm.
But if you're not going to pay the pay-per-view, if you don't pay for the pay-per-view the day of the event, you're never going to buy it.
Right.
And so it just makes sense to release all the fights 4 days
Because
later.
it's like a RIZIN. They have their own like a streaming base. They use that
Right.
basically, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's same way. Maybe Pancras should do that too. Then I mean,
Right.
but they're back on Abema TV though, right? I mean, they were in
I
terms of
think so, yes.
yeah for premium member, you can watch it for free, and if it's not pay-per-view kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah. But I just think that at this point, if you don't have a international stream, you're kind of just throwing money away.
I agree. I mean, because there's more opportunities out there. Who knows, right? They might be able to score a new sponsor through it, or who knows, right? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Plus the exposure. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, it was impossible to find a Deep Jewels match on TV. I know they did like a brief thing with like Ustream, and then they had like those tape delays with Fight
right,
TV in Canada. But now that they're on YouTube, I mean, some of those fights are getting like over 100,000 views now. So I mean, they're getting more attention. I think they're starting to come around to the benefit of putting stuff up for free.
right, exactly. So, I mean, so Pancras should do the same then, basically,
Yeah.
because
Well, my thing is, if they're not streaming it for money, they should at least be putting it on YouTube for free
or at least,
to
right,
get interest built up in the sport.
right. I mean, I think maybe the Pancras might think it's only a Japanese fighters now, so just concentrate on domestic. Once they start putting a foreign fighters in, maybe they step outside. But why wait, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because
I
they
mean,
are.
they have a budget. I don't know how much. I mean, get one of those English commentators back. They can't be super expensive,
Yeah.
and just do the shows on YouTube. I think that's how Invicta FC got started before they advanced to more and more
They can
advanced
do it on
pay-per-view models.
YouTube and on Facebook Live and all the different
Yeah,
platforms, right? So, I mean,
yeah,
that seems like what a lot of promotions are doing right now, anyway.
right.
To at least to get,
But that being said, I am interested to see what Pancrase's announcement is. I'm with you, Daniel.
yeah, I
I
think,
actually have no idea what they're going to announce,
yeah,
so I'm
I think it's
interested.
pretty soon,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see, All right, so I guess we're done for today.
Mhm.
Yeah, all right, so I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully, by next episode, we can talk about landmark and trigger fight cards, right?
Yeah, hopefully, we have some announcements to talk about.
Yeah, that too, right? All right, so I see you in 2 weeks.
Yep.
All right. See
See
you
you
later.
later.
Yep. Bye bye.